The green is a concept in New England of the commons, the place where people meet together and share and become a community. And Marblehead Green is going to be about a community that is changing in response to global warming. How are people changing? Well, they're becoming crazy for clotheslines and not using the dryer. They're raising chickens. They're shopping at the farmer's market. They're insulating their houses within an inch of their lives. They are doing things that are not far away in some other city or some national plan. These are neighbors who are outfitting their houses with solar power. These are people who are fighting for ethical recycling here in our own town. And I think they can both inspire and guide us to a new way of life.
I'm Patti Rogers. I'm the director of the Abbot Library. And I'm delighted to have had the opportunity to work with the great people at Sunlight Solar to bring this timely program to our community. Solar energy has been getting more and more attention in the media. It's definitely intriguing to think that the power of the sun, which we've been so conscious of during this hot and sunny summer, is available to supply energy in our homes. Tonight we'll learn what going solar entails, as well as how to assess the suitability of solar energy for your particular situation. As you will have already noticed, we've been able to add to the pleasure of learning the pleasure of eating. Discovering Greenland Cafe's creative cuisine thanks to the generosity of cafe owner Paul Bolden, chef Daniel Sherborne, and their helpful assistant James. Greenland Cafe is a relatively new restaurant, only 3 months old, located at 87 Washington Street in Salem. To use a library phrase, check it out. And now, Sunlight Solar, over to you.
We're Sunlight Solar, and we have been in the industry for over 20 years. We started out in Oregon, and we now have an office in Massachusetts and Connecticut and Pennsylvania as well. So Ryan and Chris are going to tell you a little bit about solar, and that's why you're all here. So take it away.
This is kind of an overview of what we're going to be going through tonight, just how solar works, some of the advantages of solar, and then just going through some of the actual costs. First of all, so solar panels, how do they work? Basically, you're going to have your photovoltaic panels, that's just a fancy way for solar electric. Those are placed onto the roof of your home, and then when the sunlight hits it, that creates a DC current. That DC current flows through your wires until it goes into an inverter that changes it around into an AC current, and that's the type that every home in the United States uses. Then from there, it flows into your electrical panel where it's dispersed through the many different items in your home. Then from there, it goes into your utility meter and eventually into the utility grid. And that's generally when you're overproducing and you're sending energy to all of your neighbors. There are 3 main factors that are important for any solar site: orientation, shade, and pitch. Ideally, you're looking for 180 degrees true south, but you do have some leeway. Southwest and southeast will work fine as well. Also for shade, ideally you're looking for little to no shade between the hours of 10 and 3 p.m. And then lastly, for pitch, this is based entirely on the latitude of Massachusetts, which is 42 degrees, but plus or minus 20 degrees from that will also work. I hope a lot of you are here just to really reduce your carbon footprint, which is, I know why myself and a lot of my colleagues got involved into the solar industry in general, just really because there's a lot of different benefits from solar panels that you will receive. For example, just see the concept that over the lifetime of its system, most solar arrays will be the same as planting over 30 acres of trees, which is certainly a substantial amount. So there certainly are other ways to reduce your energy. Kind of what we like to go by is you want to reduce as much as you can before you start to produce. And so some of the examples right here, for power stripping, this is what we do back in my apartment. Last person out of the apartment, we have our TV, our DVD player, and all that fun stuff hooked up to a power strip. Because what a lot of people don't know is anytime you plug something into an outlet, most of the time there will be a phantom load. And that means that even though the item isn't on, it's still draining electricity. And so by having a power strip, by turning that off, that'll cut the connection fully. And so just something like that can get 10 to 15% of your energy bill right off the bat. A lot of people also enjoy passive solar. I mean, this is very common sense stuff. During the winter time, opening up your shades and letting as much sunlight in, and during the summer, just keeping them closed to block out any additional sun. We also recommend, for everyone, just to get a free energy audit. The price is right. For an energy audit, basically they'll come in, they'll seal up your attic, they'll a blower door test, and just also tell you some of the other strategies to go about saving energy. Also, there's a solar dryer. It's really a revolutionary concept. You have a wall with a string, and you catch a string to a tree or something like that. You hang up your clothes, and I've done it before. It's a mess. I can't believe it works. Lastly is solar thermal, which we'll get into a little bit more later in the presentation.
This is the best time in the history of Massachusetts for going solar in terms of the incentives available. First off, the obvious reason to do solar is to reduce your electric bill. It's typical that for most of our customers, we get between 50 and 80% of the electric bill off the roof space they have available. Maybe one in 5 or so were able to actually produce 110% of their use. But it's very site-specific. This also adds quite a bit to the value of your home. According to the U.S. Department of Housing, for every dollar you save in electricity, it adds $20 to the value of your home. So the average system is going to add about $20,000 to the value of your home without increasing your property taxes. There's a state law that makes it exempt from increasing your property taxes. It's one of the few improvements you can do to your home that actually has that effect. Massachusetts has various incentives that help reduce the upfront cost, which is typically the biggest hurdle you run into with solar. There's a rebate that will come directly off the top. It's anywhere between $5,500 and $10,500 that will be knocked initially off the cost of the system. After that, there's a 30% federal tax credit, which will be used to reduce your taxes you owe the IRS. That's 30% of the out-of-pocket cost will come back to you in taxes. There's another $1,000 in state tax credits as well. And then there's the newest program, which is the Solar Renewable Energy Credits. This is a brand new program. Essentially, it's like a statewide cap and trade. So for producing green energy, you get awarded certificates. This is different from the actual electricity used to power your home. It's just paper certificates, essentially, for having produced clean, renewable energy. Now, companies like NSTAR, National Grid, or large manufacturing companies need to buy these credits to offset their carbon output. So they're going to be buying them, essentially, from you in order to subsidize green energy and offset their carbon output. And what that works out to be is, for the average size system, you're going to be getting a floor price of $285 for every megawatt hour of clean energy you produce, which in the long run of the system is going to, or in the year of the system is going to work out to be about anywhere from $1,200 up to almost $2,000 as a floor price. Now, they're actually auctioned off. So when I say the floor price, your guaranteed minimum is a certain level, but they could be almost twice the value of that. The state requires that companies that don't buy these credits, they have to pay a fine that's worth twice the value of these credits. So what our auctioneers do is they sell them at just below the cost of the fine. So the companies can either pay the fine or pay a little bit less and buy these credits. So any company that's trying to save money will essentially buy these credits from you, and you're going to make a pretty good profit. And that's actually what we're using now to really dramatically reduce the payback. About a year ago, when we first came up to Massachusetts, a year and a half ago, we were looking at about a 12 to 15-year payback, which wasn't bad. We were staying in business, but now that we're looking at, with the SREC program, we're looking at about between a 5 and 6 year payback thanks to this program. This is the Robinsons. It's a smaller system. You can see up here, it sits pretty flush to their roof, so you don't really notice it. It's about 3 inches off, but it's a good sized system. It's 14 panels. This is a breakdown of the cost of that. So this will give you an idea on how the rebates work. You have the initial cost of that system. It's 14 panels. Each panel is 230 watts. So it's a 3.2 kilowatt system. And that the initial cost of that is about $26,000. And the state rebates are going to knock $6,700 off the top. And after that, you're going to have a 30% federal tax credit and a $1,000 state tax credit, which bring it all the way down to $12,000. And then after that, looking at your annual electric savings, based on these current utility rates, is going to be around $780. And then your SREC income is going to be even higher than what you're saving from your electric bill. It's going to be $1,100, and that's going to come to you yearly, and that's good for 10 years. So this is going to make the payback in this system about 6 years, which is a lot better than we used to do. It's about half the payback of what we're looking at just a year ago. Even though there are it's pretty quick payback. It's a 25-year warranty for the system. They actually last more like 45 years, but the warranty's for 25. But still, there's that upfront cost that you have to get around. So there's different options for that. So rather than paying the $19,000 up front and waiting for that $16,000 tax credit, is you just don't pay anything up front, and you have a year of no interest and no fees for doing that. So you get to take advantage of your tax credits and your energy savings and your SREC income. You get to take advantage of all that first before paying anything for the system. And as long as you don't go beyond that year, there's no interest or fees for doing that. We also have a home equity line of credit. We can set you up through Wainwright Bank. If you don't have one open already, this isn't a bad one. It's a 15-year loan at 4.99% interest. If you have a home equity line of credit already taken out, you might be able to do better than that. Right now we're seeing customers getting around 3.5. So doing that, you actually make it cash flow positive almost immediately. There's another type of system entirely. It's this solar hot water. A lot of people ask about this. This is more common, more familiar. It was really big in the 70s and 80s. It's different from the solar panels that we were talking about earlier. These solar hot water panels are just used to heat up a hot water tank in your basement and use that to do all your domestic hot water needs, your showers, your laundry, your dishes, anything like that. It's not used to heat the house, which is a common misconception. It is possible to do that, but it gets really expensive and it's not all that effective because in the summer you're going to have all this extra heat. You really know where to put it. So it's more just for domestic hot water, but if you're looking for something, a way to go green, it's not as expensive as doing something like photovoltaic. And solar hot water typically costs you, all said and done after your tax credits, about $5,200. So it's a pretty good system. These are just a few of the arrays we've done around the area. This one's actually in Connecticut. We got an award for this one because it just happened to work out that it fit perfectly on that roof.
But a good award's a good award, so we'll take it.
But yeah, I mean, it was one of the largest ones in New England for a long time. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 residentials that beat it since, but it's a good sized system. It's a 9.8 kilowatt system, which is about 3 times the size of the average one out of Massachusetts. But it's definitely a solid system. This is a sun power system, which is kind of unique because they have this all black look to them. So it actually, it's not like the old solar panels you see with the grids all over the front. They're kind of, they look all right, but they're not quite as clean looking. These are nice and smooth. 225 watts per panel for these. And this is an actual solar panel here. It's just a demo one. This is only 90 watts. But you can see that it's got the tiles on it. It's got this black back sheet. This is all nice and smooth. This is a smaller system. This is more typical of Massachusetts. Again, the all black panels, sun power. This one's out in Maynard. You don't have to use the entire roof. There's depending on what you're looking for. This covers a good chunk of their bill, but that's all I needed for them. So it's a good size. And you can see actually up on top there too, they have a solar windows, a solar light. So the light actually hits that and creates light for them. Smaller systems are pretty common. This is just 10 panels. Either if you have a very low electric use, you don't need much, or you're just trying to cover a small portion use, this is another option. This is just it's a 2-person apartment or house where they use that to power all their electric needs. So depending on what you're using, you might not need a whole lot of panels. This is a combined system. This is a solar hot water up on the top corner here, and then down there on the barn there's a solar electric system. So they do work together. It's not mutually exclusive. Let's just give you an idea of the size difference. If you don't have a whole lot of roof space on your southern facing roof, then maybe solar hot water is a better option. So you want to plug your solar hot water system. Right now it's just heating a jacuzzi. You want to plug that into your domestic hot water system as well. That's just a trick of the plumbing. Depending on how many collectors you have, it's kind of specific to you. But roughly what you do is we have some plumbing go over to another tank that we install that your city water is going to run into. So your city water is coming in at about 55 degrees, and then this solar tank is going to heat that water up to about 140 on a good day, maybe 120 if it's a little cloudy. And then from there, it's going to run into domestic hot water, and then the excess can spill over into your tank, or vice versa. It depends on your plumbing. We'd have to come out and check that out to be more specific. But it is definitely very possible. This is another type of panel. We don't do exclusively sun power. We have other types as well. This is an evergreen system. They're local, which is nice. They're made out of Fort Devens. A little bit bigger, not quite as efficient, but still above average. They got this kind of it's polycrystalline look, so they have that kind of spotted look to them. It's more typical of what you see in older panels, but it's still a very efficient system, and it's the greenest on the market, which is pretty nice.
So what we have right here is a solar wedge tilt mount. Basically what you're going to see, because as we were talking about before about how the 3 main factors, one of those being orientation, making sure that you're faced due south. This house right here is an east-west house. basically meaning that it isn't pointed the right way. So what we do is we point the panels the proper way using that solar tilt mount right there. So that's just definitely just another option that we can go down depending on each individual home. Right here we have a ground mount. This is a different example that you can see for people that don't quite have enough roof space, or they want to be covering 100% of their entire electrical bill. If you do have enough open land, I personally would prefer something like this, because we have complete control all over all of your three main factors. We can pitch it to however much we like, point it directly due south. So certainly it's one of the better ways to get full advantage of your solar panels. Right here is, certainly the technology is fantastic. What it is a dual axis tracker. So what this means is that as the sun is going throughout the sky, this will actually track it and focus it the entire time through two different servo motors in the actual construction. And so this will actually up your solar panels efficiency by about 30%, which is fairly substantial.
They're good for up to 120 mile-an-hour sustained winds or 170 mile-an-hour gusts. So if you're not losing shingles off your roof, those panels won't be going anywhere. They're really bolted down. It's again, Justin would be a good person to talk to about this, but what they are is there's an L-foot that has a piece of flashing that's slid under the shingles and bolted down, and then an L-foot sits on top of that where we attach the rails. The panels sit on top of the rails, so it's not going anywhere. It's all checked out with structural codes first off to make sure that we can't put them up there. But no, it's good for any kind of hurricane winds. Yeah, it's tempered glass on the outside, so they're pretty sturdy. Say a tree or something were to fall down and hit it though, which could definitely put a pretty good dent in the array. It's covered by your homeowner's insurance, and 99% of the time that won't make your insurance rates go up. That have solar panels. I have to say 99% because there was one customer where it actually did. They were doing a leasing program and it did make their rate go up, but for most people it won't affect your rates. But it will be covered by your homeowner's insurance. It's considered part of your roof. That's a really good question. We get that all the time. People say, why are you doing solar up here in New England? Why aren't you down in Arizona or something? And yeah, Arizona, of course, they have more sun hours. But cold weather actually helps us out a little bit. We have, the system runs more efficiently when it is cold. So you're actually going to get a little bit of a jump from that. Of course we don't have too many hours and we're not going to produce as well. But in the hours that we have when it's cold and there's snow on the ground, reflecting that sunlight back up into your panels, you're actually going to do pretty well. So we'll actually catch up pretty close on a cold, clear day as they would on a day in Arizona. Less hours, but still it runs about 80% of what they do. And one thing to note is Germany is by far the leader in solar panels. They actually have less sun hours than us. So we actually do better than them. Yeah, they're good through 2016. So they're good through that. So yeah, that's there's actually a website I can tell you about. It's if you go to DSIRE, it's DSIRE, USA.org. It gives you a full breakdown of all the incentives. They'll tell you right there that it's good through 2016. So it's not going anywhere.
For the ground mount, that would probably be an additional about $5,000 to $6,000. For the tilt axis tracker, as much as I love the technology, generally it'll be a little bit too exorbitant. We have yet to actually install one of those in Massachusetts. In Connecticut, I think they've done a couple, and out in Oregon, I know they've done one or two. But certainly if you are 100% just devoted to showing everyone how great your solar panels are, that would be a great way to go.
Google did a study on this. Google put them all out in their buildings in California or wherever Google is based. But they came out with a study that says if it rains 3 times a year, that will take care of any cleaning needs you have. So that's really the only regular maintenance would be any kind of cleaning. Now, of course, in New England we have snow. And if your roof is pretty flat, if we're talking 20 degrees or less, that snow might be a bit of a problem. You might have to take a plastic roof rake and brush it off if you want to get the maximum production. If you don't do that, it will melt off anyway. It'll melt off in about a day or so if you had a good sized snowstorm. The panels actually, they stay a little bit warm. They're black, they're glass. The snow melts and slides off pretty quick. But that's the only kind of maintenance there is. There's no moving parts up there. There's the inverter's warranted for 10 years. There's no maintenance required with that. If you really want to be extra careful, you can dust out the fan and that, maybe every couple months or something. But that's about it in terms of maintenance. Unless you live by a crop dusting zone or heavy jet traffic or anything like that, that's the only time it adds extra cleaning needs. You know, they don't get dented or anything like that. They're a little bit stronger than, they're not as strong as your windshield, essentially. So if you're not, you know, cracking your windshield in a hailstorm or anything like that, you'll be fine. Still certified roof, so if something were to happen, you know, like if really crazy hail came down and busted it up, and you're protected. But there's torsion tests, there's all sorts of tests on them that make sure they hold up. So they can. It's obviously it's not preferable because it's a much trickier installation. It's really hard to walk on slate roofs. I don't know if you ever tried, but no, it is possible. That ground mount you saw, one of the reasons that we had a ground mount there, besides the orientation being wrong, was that it was a slate roof. And so with the slate roof, you need to get these special hook systems that will slide out the slate shingle. You put the hook down, you put the rails on top of that. It costs probably an extra, maybe even a couple $1,000 to do it on a slate roof. It's possible. There's usually ways to get around it, but generally, you know, you want asphalt shingles is the best. But we've done it on slate, we've done it on cedar shake, and that kind of things. It just gets a little tricky. But there's always ways around it.
Absolutely. Generally what we have, what we were mentioning before, for the existing tank that's there, we recommend that it has probably about another additional 7 or 8 years left on its life. But when we do our installation, we have a solar hot water tank that would be, as we were saying before, that's where all of your town water is coming up and filling in that. And then your existing tank will become your backup tank as far as heating is concerned. So if you heat your water currently with natural gas, oil, or electric, that will kick on once the solar hot water tank has been drained of all the solar hot water. So you're not going to be running a risk of, you know, getting into a cold shower, which I personally hate.
It's always going to be the solar water that heats that tank. And if you do hook it up, there's a setting on it, you just turn it down, basically maybe really low so it doesn't freeze or something like that. But no, that does not, you're not trying to heat that for electricity to defeat the purpose.
Yeah, so the tank you have now is really, it's just your backup tank. It becomes your backup tank. It only turns on in case we have really, really bad weather for a long spell, and it's not really heating up the water, or if you had a lot of guests over and you needed extra man. But the tank you have now, that will become the backup, and it'll only turn on when the monitoring system is reading the solar tank is running low. So it's all protected against that. You won't be double heating your water.
So it's automatic then?
Automatic, yeah. No levers or switches for you. It's automatic.
Yeah, but how long for it to catch up?
It will read when it's starting to get low, so it'll kick on before it runs out, so you won't have any kind of lag time between them. You'll have an 80-gallon at least tank now that'll become your solar tank. Typically, you can, depending on the layout, you can shingle around it. We like to say that you want about 10 years left on this shingles on your roof, just to be safe, because you can't take it off afterwards. You just leave the footings in, and you take the panels off and you shingle around the footings, and you put the solar panels back on and just essentially snap back onto those railing systems. But it will cost you maybe an extra $1,000 or so on the whole re-roofing project. So if you're going to be doing it the next couple of years, might as well do that first. Save yourself that money. But it is possible, and it's been done. These panels here are 225 watts per panel.
220
The ones on George's house are 230.
per panel,
Per panel, that's
per
right.
hour?
As soon as the light's hitting it, that's how much they're producing.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the capacity of them. The weight is about 33 pounds or so per
Okay.
panel. The cost, it's on a per watt cost.
Okay.
So that's, you know, it depends on what you're looking at, but roughly it works out to be something like, what do you think, 1,000 or so? A little less, 800?
Well, for some part.
Yeah, for some power. There's different panels we use, some are more expensive. Some power, the highest efficiency, they're premium panels. They're also premium cost. There's something like Evergreen or Schuco panels that are a lot less expensive. They, you know, they'll be closer to something like 500 or so per panel, but it's on a per watt cost. There is a lease program that's in the works. We were doing it a few months ago. We're actually looking at, again, a new financing group behind that. So that probably will be coming out again. How it works, the old leasing program that should be reinstated soon, I'd imagine. It worked out that you pay a small amount up front, and you have a monthly cost for about 15 years. And then after that, you can buy out the system at 20% of the installed cost. So it's, the payback, of course, on doing a lease isn't nearly as good as doing an outright purchase, but it's a much easier way to go solar. It's much lower payout. It's about a couple $1,000s to get the whole thing installed, and then you have that system for 15 years producing green energy. So it's more if you're looking for you really want solar in your roof, but you don't want to have to pay out a ton of money to do it. That's one option. That's typically how it's done, yeah. If you do produce 110% of your use, of your electric use, that extra 10% will be credited because your meter will be spinning backwards. So then at the end of the month, that credit will roll over into the next month. At the end of the year, if you still have some credit left over, typically how it's done is you get paid at the generation rate. So you get paid at the cost minus the transmission charge for what you've produced. The reason we try not to oversize too much is because that's about only 2/3 of the whole retail cost of electricity, depending on the state or the town, but roughly around there. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of economic sense to shoot for like 200% of your electric use, just because you're only going to get paid back at a lower rate. So you usually want to go right around 80–90% of your bill is kind of the sweet spot for solar.
Well, Cindy Snow is actually our liaison for Marblehead.
So right now, you are correct. We do need to submit a proposal to the Marblehead Light Department with all the documentation. We do follow Commonwealth Solar, for whatever Commonwealth Solar has on their website as far as applications, things of that sort. They do need to be completed as well. We do net meter. We do buy back at wholesale rate.
We have looked into that. The reason we don't do a whole lot of them, I think we've done maybe 1 or 2 out in Oregon. We haven't done any in Massachusetts yet, but the reason we don't do too many is because they're about 1/3 of the efficiency of panels. So you need a lot more roof space to get the same thing you get out of panels. Payback isn't quite there. Technology might catch up in the next 5–10 years or so, but until then, you're kind of sticking with panels just because they're the most efficient on the market. You want to make sure, first off, the orientation. That's key. You want to have it actually at 195 degrees magnetic, which is 180 degrees true south. So you declinate 15 degrees at this latitude. So that's perfect south. And then another thing that will help is putting a nice steep roof. If you have about 40 degrees, that's that's pretty steep, but that's actually perfect at this latitude. And then of course the lowest amount of shade you can would be great. So no trees right to the south of your house. Behind the east-west line is fine, but to the south of your house, no trees is ideal.
Anything special with the mechanicals or?
No, if we're doing a new construction house, we like to run the conduit internally. It just makes it look a little cleaner. But that's the conduit, the wires running down from the panels down to the basement. But that's usually done on the outside of the house. It just follows the rain letter. It's not too noticeable. But if the walls are open, we like to run it straight down to the basement so nobody sees it.
Isn't a metal roof your best choice if you
metal
had
is great.
to do it? A metal roof with a standing seam is
Yeah.
the easiest for
That's really easy. There's
panel
just,
installation.
Yeah, exactly. This thing's called S5 clips. They essentially just snap the panels right onto the roof. It's a piece of cake. It's probably the easiest installation. So other things like that. People, some people feel funny about the standing seam roofs. Some people don't care, but we've done installations on them and it's really quick. So that'll help. But asphalt shingles is kind of standard, so we're pretty quick at those too. The panels are expected to last 45 years, so you shouldn't need to replace them anytime soon. But they're warranted for 25 years, so that's across the board, all the panels we use. So that warranty says that after 25 years, they'll do at least 80% of what they did when they were first installed. So, they're going to go down a little bit in production just because of weathering and other factors like that over time, but enough that we're going to guarantee they're going to do at least 80% of what they first did. That's across the board. We have a 10-year labor warranty on anything we do. So if there's any issues with a leak or anything like that, we fix the leak and the damage. That's warranted for 10 years. There's also, on the sun power panels, there's a 10-year manufacturer warranties too that says that if anything were to crack or delaminate or anything like that due to manufacturer default, they replace the system for you. Evergreen, I believe, is... Sorry?
Are the warranties transferred?
They are, yep, absolutely. And then Evergreen, about a 5-year manufacturer warranty instead of the 10-year.
Actually, what comes along with the system is going to be a monitoring system. And so that's actually done by Selectria, another Massachusetts-based company. And so you're going to end up with what's called a SolarN View box. And so that if you go to, actually when you get home, if you go to solrenview.com, SOLRENVIEW.com, then you can actually check out some of the installations that we've already done, because every installation is on there, and you can just go down to Sunlight Solar Energy, and then look through the list of names, and then when you click on should you go ahead with the solar installation, you click on your name, and every 15 minutes it updates with a graph to show you exactly how much energy you're producing at that moment. So some people get really into it, and you can kind of look through, you can say, oh, there was a cloud there, oh, there was something else. But that's if you really wanted to spend a lot of time.
Something we should make pretty clear is this is not the old solar panels where there's batteries. We've done them in the past, and it is possible to do, but they're expensive, they're a pain, there's a lot of maintenance. What we use now is your utility grid that you have right now, Marblehead, will be essentially your storage system. So the power that you produce is going to, when you're not using it, it's going to run your meter backwards, and it's going to feed into the grid. And then when it's nighttime and the panels obviously aren't producing anything, and your meter's going to spin forward as it normally does as you draw from that grid. So then the difference is you get paid, or at the end of each year, you get either paid or pay the difference of what you use. So if you've produced more electricity than you've used, then you actually get money back, as Cindy was saying, from Marblehead. Evergreen panels, they're the greenest on the market, and so she's asking, what does that mean? That means that in terms of the carbon output, the carbon footprint for making these panels, for producing the silicone wafers and the extruded aluminum frame and shipping them across the country, Evergreen has the lowest carbon output in doing that, which means that typically a solar panel will take about 4 years to recoup the carbon footprint of making it, manufacturing it, installing all that. When it's all factored in, it takes about 4 years. Evergreen is closer to 2 years. It's either 1 or 2 years to recoup its carbon footprint in terms of the green energy is produced. So that's what it says when it means it's the greenest in the market. You'll notice that when they ship, they don't use boxes or anything like that. It's all on these recyclable plastic racking system that just has it all snapped together, and it ships, and it's very low carbon output in terms of their manufacturing as well. So that's why they're the greenest.
And are they as efficient as
They're above average efficiency. They're 16% efficient. That means that 16% of the light that hits them, they can convert it to usable electricity, which is actually a pretty high margin. It doesn't sound like a lot because it's 16%, but that means of the light hitting it, it produces a good chunk into actual electricity. The highest efficiency is sun power. They're about 18.5% efficient, so they're a little bit better. But the average is 14. So Evergreen is just kind of right between the average and the best. So that helps. It is a modular system, and you could take it with you. Typically, you're gonna just sell your house for a higher value. Like I was saying, for every dollar you save in electricity, so it has tons of value at home. So that alone.
But to the person who wants that.
Right. Yeah. If somebody is really anti-green energy or but they understand what they're looking at, and they appreciate that it's a house that produces its own electricity. It's going to give you a pretty good leg up on selling other houses.
See the panels to increase, and if so, would you change them over within a few years?
You can't change them over. It's typically, historically, it's been about a 1% increase in efficiency over the last 5 or 6 years. And about that. So it's going up slowly. You're not seeing these giant jumps like you saw with computers and that kind of thing. But really the kind of the philosophy we have is that if you're producing enough power to power your house, a watt's a watt. You don't need necessarily the most efficient thing. So it makes sense to do it now when there's the rebate programs and the SREC programs, rather than waiting 5 years and missing out on essentially another $50,000 of payback from the system. But there's a school of thought that says maybe in 5 years from now there's going to be an even better program. But the idea behind the whole rebate and SREC program is to subsidize the market until the costs come down and become self-sustaining. Because right now the cost for panels versus for install and everything like that, it's pretty expensive. This system, regular 5 kilowatt system, costs you about $45,000 to install if there weren't any programs, which just puts it out of the hands of most people. So those rebate programs are help make it more competitive, make the costs come down, and then go away. So kind of it's a judgment call. Doing everything electric in your house it's pretty unlikely that you're going to have enough roof space to cover a good chunk of that bill. You know, if you're heating with electric, cooking with electric, doing everything with electric, then you know you're going to need maybe a 15 kilowatt system to cover all that. Depends on the house; it's very specific. But you know, we like to say gas stove is pretty good, that kind of thing. Oil, not so much. But heating with electricity isn't also the most efficient. I think natural gas is pretty good. You have to talk to an energy auditor though to get the specifics on what appliances are best. It's kind of a little bit out of our realm, but we like to say just avoid oil and solar panels to take care of most of your domestic needs. Yeah, it's typically it's your lights, it's your computers, everything electric in your house. Your TV, exactly, that kind of stuff. But if you're heating with electricity, in a system this size, it's pretty unlikely to be able to heat this whole house. But when you're away, you're not at home, and your music's going to be spinning backwards at night, you'll start to catch up to it. So it doesn't really matter. You don't have to be in the house using the electricity you're producing in the day to make it make sense. It actually, the whole beauty of net metering is that it works that way. So you don't have to be there using it all the time. You can just use it whenever you want to, and it all comes out in the wash. Very good question. Yeah, so it's daily. So at the end of the year, when you're settling out, that's when if you overproduce, that's when you're not making as much money back as you could.
Are they like Christmas lights, so if one went out on my roof? Is it possible to have one panel not producing yet the others are?
Yeah, no, they're hooked up in series. So if you have enough shade on enough panels, that can knock out the whole string of panels.
Okay.
There's ways around it. There's things like micro inverters, which is just a little inverter that goes in the back of each panel, so they work independently. So there's really no extra cost for under a 5 kilowatt system, so it's fine to do it that way. It's great if you have a lot of shade. If you don't have a lot of shade and it's you're not going to be knocking out certain panels, then it's better to run it all into a single inverter. It just runs a little more efficiently. But yeah, they just essentially hook together and they sit on the roof. That's it.
But you would run if your roof was shaded. A certain group would be knocked out.
Right.
Temporary.
Yeah, unless you want to do micro inverters. Yeah. So depends what you're looking for.
When the power's out, the system shuts down.
Yes, yep, that's a safety mechanism. So the idea is you don't want to be feeding electricity into a down wire and then killing some electrician that comes out to fix it. So it checks every 5 minutes to see the power's been restored. And as soon as the power's been restored, it will turn back on. So you don't have to go pulling levers. But yeah, if the power's out, then the grid is off for safety. There's certain ways around that with bypass switches and things like that, but it's town codes that make that, green light or not, so you have to check that out. And we get all permits and inspections lined up for you, so it's all part of our turnkey installation. So we do permits, parts, inspections, labor, everything like that. But yeah, you'll typically need a building permit. Some towns even require a structural engineer to come out and take a look at the site. I'm not sure about Marblehead. I don't know off the top of my head. There's a product for that. It's actually, technically speaking, it's the most efficient way to do solar. It's very simple. It's not like the solar hot water collecting system we were talking about. It's just essentially black mats that you have. They'll typically go up on a pool shed or something like that, or even a ground mount, but they're going to be tilted up about 45 degrees. And you have water running through them. That gets heated by the sun.
Or what, plastic?
Yep, yeah, plastic. It's that. That's it. It's the most simple way to do solar. We don't do a whole lot of them. We specialize in PV and solar hot water as well, but it's another thing that you can do. It works a lot better than doing something like solar hot water, and then in the winter having all these additional panels that you aren't using. So it's very cost effective. It's consistent.
That would be for hot subsidy, the pool and the hot tub?
Yeah, it would depend on the size of your pool and how much you're interested. So probably give you a more accurate quote than that. If your house is facing dead west, you're gonna dead south. Say it's getting 100%. If it's perfect west, you're gonna be losing about up to, depending on the steepness of the roof, up to 20% of your production can be lost just by that orientation. That's why
for 35 degrees.
Yeah, 35 degrees, then it's probably around 19 or so. I'll have to check the calculations, but it's about that on dead west. That's based on house value or income. Yeah, there's the income or the house value has to be at or below a certain level in order to get the full rebate. The idea is they don't want all the rebate money going to people that can easily that have, $1 million houses. They want to get a rebate. People that have houses that are at moderate value, or at the standard value for the town. Yep, that's everything. So the only thing that adds to your cost would be if your rafters weren't up to code and we had to sister them, that can add a few extra hundred to the cost. Or if you have an old fuse box, you don't have the actual breakers, you have fuses, you need to upgrade your circuit breaker panel. Or if you have a circuit breaker panel that's just full, we need to upgrade that. Those are the only additional costs. So that'd be the full cost for a 14 panel installation. We did a lot of installations out in Maynard, and we threw this barbecue in order to kind of inaugurate the town, and it was the first installation that went up. And we had this, all the neighbors, everybody come, and it was just black, pouring rain the whole time. We had to put up tents and everything, but the panels were still producing 50% of what they would be producing under clear conditions. So they still do work, even though it was really dark and rainy. If you have about a foot of snow on them, yeah, they're not gonna turn on. They're not gonna do anything. But if there's light enough to see there's light in your panels, as long as there's enough to hit that threshold, the whole system will turn on. So even in really bad weather, it'll still work. Yeah, it's a historical building that we just put some on. Actually, starting this week, we have a installation on historic buildings. You do have to. It depends on the town. You have to talk with them, and that's all on us to get the permits and everything, make sure it can go forward. But generally, people are pretty sympathetic to the whole aim of sustainable energy. So we can usually, kind of tout the greenness of this to get what we want. So, yeah. But once in a while, it'll be an issue. But check it out.
Yeah, in short, I have a 200 watt system, covers 108% of my power, until it ages a bit, and then it'll cover 100%. And I just turned it on in June. My July bill had a credit of $54, which gets carried forward and somehow magically gets reconciled at the end of the year. I don't know how that works. But I just want to make the point, the real money right now is not the avoided electric bill cost, it's in the SRECs. That's where the money is. So in a way, as long as there's SRECs, it does pay to oversize the system. Because that's probably more than 3/4 of the quote income, whatever, avoided cost or whatever, is from the SRECs, not from what I'm saving on my electric.
That's the
Solar renewable energy credits,
Yeah.
it's part of the solar carve-out program in Massachusetts, which is good through at least 2016. It's kind of a volatile program. Every time you look, it's a little different.
Yeah.
But it is there, and it will continue to be there. So we were fairly low consumption. I have about 500 kilowatt hours, so we were paying, 60, 70, 80 bucks. And it would be less in the summer, more in the winter. We don't use much air conditioning. We've already done the power strip, phantom power. There's a wonderful device called kilowatt. For 20, 30 bucks online, Amazon, whatever, you can plug in and tell exactly what any device is taking in terms of power. And that's worth investing to find out where your power is going. I put it on my fridge thinking it was a power hog, it's 15 years old, it seemed to run a lot. But after a week of measuring its consumption, I said, this is fine. I didn't replace it. It was a lot greener than I thought. So a kilowatt is worth, that's a really nice tool. I had to have a building permit from the town. I don't think they did an inspection prior to that, although Justin, you can tell them how it really worked.
Yeah, I came and inspected George's house. I have the contractor's license for the company, so I'm the CSL. So I went to George's house and verified all the numbers I found there. And then I sent that off to an engineer, who he runs all the calculations on the sizing of the rafters and stuff. And then he gives me a report on that. And then when I pull the building permit, I take the report to the town hall, give it to the building inspector, and he can verify that's fine. And if he doesn't like it, then he deny it. But it worked out well in George's place.
Thanks everyone for coming. Thank you.
had a solar photovoltaic system put in end of June 2010, so that's about a year and a half ago. And so at this point, I've had more than a year's worth of experience with it, and it can kind of give you an idea of how it went. Did it meet its expectations? Am I happy with the whole process? And the answer is yes to all of those. It's a fairly complex process, but I put in enough capacity to essentially cover all or a little bit more of the electricity that I use. We use about 500 kilowatt hours per month on average across the year, and my system generates maybe 10% more than that on average across the year. Of course, in the winter months, it doesn't make anywhere near as much as it does in the summer. But you have to look at the whole process on an annualized basis. I put in about 5,000 watts worth of capacity, which is 24 panels. My entire top of the roof is covered with them. In essence, it's been a moneymaker. Really looking at this from a financial point of view, you have to look at the upfront cost and then the payback time, or return on investment, if you will. And when I did this, and that's a moving target, but when I did this, the return on investment is about 5 years. And that clock actually only started ticking last week when we had to actually put out our first penny. We had an 18-month interest-free loan, which was part of the incentive package. And that bill just came due last week. So our clock, return on investment clock, actually didn't start ticking until now. And we already have a year and a half's worth of power in the bank. And the payback gets pretty complicated because there's really two sources of income that are part of that. One is your avoided electric cost. Our electric bill on an annualized basis is slightly negative. They actually have to pay us. In the winter, obviously, we don't make as much power as we use, so we have to, well, technically pay them, but we actually have a credit of about $200, and over the winter that credit will go down. It'll never get to the point where it's zero, and then next summer it'll go up. And if at some point that credit becomes more than $200, they actually have to cut us a check. So there's the avoided electric bill cost, which for us is about $1,300 a year. We use about 500 kilowatt hours per month on average. Some people are going to use not much less than that. Others could easily use double that, depending on your house, the size of the house, number of people living there, how energy efficient you are. So there's two sources of income that contribute to the payback. One is the avoided electric bill, and that's about $1,300. The other is a little more complicated. It's called Solar Renewable Energy Credits. There'll be a quiz. SRECs, we call them. And that's a state program, varies state by state, but Massachusetts has a pretty good one. What it is, they require the electric utility companies to buy X% of their power that they sell from renewable energy sources. Now that can be solar, it can be wind, it can be hydro, and so on and so forth. But a renewable energy credit is basically based on how much power you generate. It doesn't matter who uses it. Right now, the going rate in Massachusetts for 1 megawatt of generated power, 1 megawatt hour, of generated power is a little over $500. And they're sold at auction, and part of the sign-up process is you sign up with a solar aggregator. So this all happens without me doing anything, although they take 5% as their cut. But we make about 6 megawatt hours a year, and if I get about $500 for each of them, that's $3,000 of income just for making it. It doesn't matter who uses it. One of the important things about a solar installation is siting, or as they say in real estate, location, location, and location. I was fortunate to have a good site, pretty much southern exposure, about 20 degrees off due south, which is important. You can pretty much be about 45 degrees plus or minus due south and still do it. But my panels are flat on the roof, and if you're not within about 20-30 degrees of due south, you have to have them tilted up a little bit to get sufficient efficiency out of the system. When the installers come, the first thing they do is a site survey, and they tell you what you can do, how much you can put in, and there's actually a site efficiency calculation that they do. They take into account the angle of the roof, the angle of the installation relative to due south, the amount of shading that you might have on the panels over the course of different times of the year, and they come up with X% of ideal. So siting efficiencies is a very important concept. In general, you want to be above about 90%, because that really determines how efficient your system is, which determines your payback on your investment. This system here is about 93%, and pretty much anything into the 90s is pretty good. It's rare to get 100% because everything has to be perfect orientation, perfect slope. The slope of the roof here is about 18 degrees. It's a little confusing because the contractor said the ideal slope is 45 degrees. That's not correct. It's got to be something closer to 30. I haven't done the calculations, but the bottom line is anywhere from about 15 to 20 degrees to about 45 degrees, maybe 50 degrees is okay. Anything, a flat roof, you'd have to have them raised up on angles because flat's not going to get you a very good efficiency. But obviously the most efficient system is one where they're just flat on the surface and they don't have to have any mounts. Now the whole return on investment really is an important concept. So if there weren't any subsidies, the payback would be 40 years just based on avoided electric bill cost. The system lifetime is only 25 years. If there weren't any subsidies, there wouldn't be any market. Nobody would buy them. My payback, when at the time that I put this in a year and a half ago, end of spring, summer 2010, is about 5 years, which is a pretty good return on investment. There's a number of different ways to look at this, but the bottom line is you have to really be careful about what your payback is, how much money you're going to have to put out up front, and how long it's going to take to earn that money back. And that's going to vary a lot depending on many things, because not everything is guaranteed. The renewable energy credit program is going to change over time. It's guaranteed out maybe 3 or 4 years, but after that, nobody knows what's going to happen. The other thing is that the grid, this is a grid-tied system, meaning when I make more power than I use, I push power back into the grid, I spin the meter backwards. At night, when I'm not making any power, or last January when they were covered with snow for a month, I'm pulling power out of the grid. But the grid, turns out, can only support about 20% of the power overall that's on the grid can be renewable or what we call intermittent sources. So there will be a point where we do get 20% renewable energy, intermittent energy on the grid, at which point there won't be any more market for solar. On the other hand, there are a lot of things changing. The price of the panels is dropping. They're all made in China now. The last domestic producer, there was actually one, Evergreen panels out in Fort Devens that was in the news last spring. They went bankrupt and they had like $50 million subsidy from the state. And the question is, okay, where'd that money go? Is the state going to get it back? The answer is probably no. They couldn't compete with the Chinese. They're all out of China now. The prices go down and the efficiency, which is an important concept, keeps going up. As technology improves, the actual efficiency of the panel relative to the power that gets, from the sunlight that gets on it versus the amount of power they actually produce. These are about 18%, 19%. They're probably past 20% now. As time goes on, they're improving. That technology is continuously improving. So that's another factor in the payback. Another thing is it's not simple from a paperwork point of view. There's all sorts of contacts you need to make with the state, with the electrical utility company, with your solar aggregator that sells your SRECs. There has to be a building inspection. There's a lot of paperwork involved. And for me, at least, that path was not clearly laid out. It's kind of like, okay, what's this? I have to do what? You know, and I have at least 3 or 4 different accounts with different entities that are involved in this system. I couldn't even list them all for you right now, but Mass CEC, the SREC, the solar aggregator, Solrin, which is the inverter company. So, and it may or may not be a smooth ride depending on different factors. So.
You take that $12,527 and you realize that you're making 15% on your money every year based on the numbers that are there. So I'm taking money out of some place that's earning 2 or 3% or losing money, and I'm putting it into this, which is earning 15%.
Yes.
So to me, it has nothing to do with being green or with, you know, it has to do with this being a smarter place than treasury bills to put your money. But you
Still all about the green.